The instant the ice-cold sangria slid across Marcus Reynolds' tongue, his eyes bulged in horror, and his hand jerked so violently that the glass rent from his fingers, sending ruby-red liquid spraying like blood across the white linen. Chairs screeched as guests leapt to their feet. The string quartet's violins screeched to a halt. Within a heartbeat, Marcus collapsed against the table's edge, the crystal shards rattling beneath him, and a strangled roar tore from his throat. Chaos erupted. Claire Reynolds' perfectly coiffed hair shimmered beneath the chandelier as she surged forward, voice sharp. "Adian, what have you done?" she demanded, fingernails digging into the back of her husband's chair. Her eyes, fierce and accusing, swept the room, drawing every horrified gaze to the young photographer at the table's far corner. Before Ethan could even rise, Uncle Harold's booming voice cut through the pandemonium. "He's only good for daydreams and bright filters, not poison." Aunt Susan gasped, clutching her pearl necklace, while cousins murmured in alarm. Claire's lips curved into a triumphant smirk. "You'll never touch 1 cent of the Reynolds fortune," she declared, voice ringing clear. "Not a penny will ever be yours." Ethan remained frozen, confusion and fury warring in his chest as he dialed 911. "Please?" "We need help," he managed, through shaking fingers. Through the hallway's open doors, he caught sight of the grand staircase, its carpet stained crimson at the top. In that shattering moment, every whispered doubt about his character crystallized into full-blown accusation, leaving him stripped of dignity and certain that this was only the beginning of a far darker conspiracy. Blue and red emergency lights fractured the soft glow of the chandelier as Marcus Reynolds crumpled forward in his chair. The martini glass slipped from his trembling fingers, striking the marble tabletop and shattering in a cascade of glittering fragments. A drop of crimson wine traced a stark line down his crisp white shirt, and his face contorted in a sudden gasp before he slumped entirely, limbs lax, onto the knife-edged shards beneath him. "Sir? Mr. Reynolds!" A woman's sharp voice cut through the chaos. Officer Denise Harper knelt beside Marcus, pressing a hand to his forehead. The room spun for Ethan Parker as guests shrieked and backed away, plates crashing to the floor. Pillars of floral arrangements toppled, the ornate rugs soaked with wine and panic. Claire Reynolds' voice rose in a high, accusing pitch. "Ethan, do something! Can't you see what you've done?" Ethan's heart thundered. Just minutes before, Claire had toasted him with a patronizing grin and a lingering emphasis on how not 1 penny of the Reynolds estate would ever end up in his hands. Her husband had nodded solemnly, declaring him utterly useless for failing to earn a stable corporate salary. Those cruel words had stung. Now they felt like a prelude to something far more sinister. "Get back," Ethan barked, stepping forward. "I didn't touch that glass." His voice wavered, but his eyes locked on Claire's smug smirk. "I swapped drinks with Marcus to spare him the headache you boasted he'd get from 1 sip." A hush fell. The onlookers exchanged uneasy glances. Before anyone could react, the wail of sirens crescendoed into the night. 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt on the driveway. Uniformed officers spilled into the foyer, flashlights carving arcs through the thick air. Officer Harper rose, smoothing her badge. "Please step aside," she instructed, voice measured. She and her partner, Officer Lucas Grant, a tall man with a stone-set jaw, began canvassing the room with practiced precision. Ethan's cheeks burned as Harper knelt to collect the largest shard of glass, bagging it with gloved hands. She held it up. "Sir, your fingerprints are on this fragment." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Of course, I carried the tray when the glasses were set out." He motioned toward the sideboard. "I delivered them myself." Grant flicked on his flashlight, illuminating the gore-streaked rug. "We also recovered a single hair from this glass's remaining liquid." He produced a tiny vial with a copper-brown strand floating inside. "We'll do a DNA match." A cold dread coiled in Ethan's gut. He recalled the subtle tremor in Claire's hand as she poured him the drink, the too bright invitation in her eyes. Now those memories twisted into guilt by association, a chorus of gasps and whispered suspicions leveled toward him. Ethan swallowed. That hair. It could be from... He broke off as Harper's gaze slid toward the darkened corner, where the security monitor sat. Its red recording light was stubbornly off. "Strange," Harper muttered, checking her wrist mount tablet. The camera stopped recording 30 seconds before the collapse. "We've got a missing footage segment right when Mr. Reynolds went down." Murmurs of shock rippled through the guests. Claire's lips thinned into a frown of anxiety. Marcus groaned, stirring on the chair. Mia Reynolds, pale and wide-eyed, whispered into her sister-in-law Olivia's sleeve. He'd never do this. Olivia shook her head, eyes darting from the officers to Ethan. Everyone seemed to lean in, sharing the weight of a terrible suspicion. Ethan Parker, so often dismissed as the dim, gentle in-law, had orchestrated this nightmare. Officer Grant rose, clearing his throat. "Mr. Parker, we're going to need you to come with us to the station for further questioning." His voice was calm, but the implied accusation cut through the room like a blade. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. He realized with icy clarity that the very family who had scorned his passion for photography had now branded him a murderer. The silk curtains billowed around him as he straightened, wiping a trembling hand on his jacket. With every pair of eyes fixed on his retreating figure, he followed the officers into the night. Behind him, the Reynolds household dissolved into a symphony of frantic voices. Claire's frantic denial, Marcus's weak protestations, the guests' startled exclamations, and in the oppressive silence that cracked the veneer of opulence, Ethan vowed silently to unearth the truth, buried beneath the missing footage no matter what it cost him. Ethan woke before dawn, the city's hush seeping in through the gaps in his loft's curtains. He lay still for a moment, tracing the memory of Marcus's collapse, the shock of wine shattering, the crimson stain blossoming across a pristine shirt, the horrified gasp that seemed to echo in his skull. His head throbbed with questions. Who had slipped that barbiturate into the martini? Why target Marcus instead of him? And how could he prove his innocence when the evidence arrayed against him was so damning? He dressed quickly, choosing a charcoal blazer over a tailor-pressed shirt, then gathered his camera bag and the sealed evidence pouch. Every step toward his car felt heavy, as though gravity itself resisted his quest for the truth. The Portland streets were empty at this hour, lampposts casting long, feeble shadows across the pavement. Ethan gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and navigated the silent avenues toward Dr. Ava Liu's lab. The building stood at the end of a narrow side street, a modest brick facade overgrown with ivy, its windows dark except for a single light in the second-floor window. Ethan climbed the fire escape to a door marked "Personal Only," the metal grate cold under his palm. Inside, the lab smelled sharply of antiseptic and metal. Rows of gleaming counters held bottles of reagents with cryptic labels. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, their sterile glow highlighting the meticulous order of the space. Dr. Liu herself emerged from a back room, hair pulled into a precise bun and wearing a white coat that matched the lab's pristine surroundings. She greeted Ethan with a measured nod. "Mr. Parker, thank you for coming so early. Please, have a seat." He set the dust-speckled evidence bag on the counter and unzipped it, revealing the carefully wrapped glass shard. Dr. Liu lifted it gently, placing it under a high-powered lens attached to a microscope. Ethan watched her reflection in the steel framework, a study in composure, while the world outside threatened to spin out of control. After a minute that stretched into infinity, she withdrew a clipboard. The residue on the glass contains a barbiturate analog, phenobarbital derivative. In low concentrations, it induces drowsiness. In moderate doses, it impairs motor function and cognitive processing. At higher levels, it can suppress the respiratory center in the brainstem. Lethal. Ethan's skin prickled. Lethal, he echoed, as if tasting the word's weight. He thought of Marcus lying helpless, then of his own life poised on the brink of ruin. "How confident are you in this analysis?" Dr. Liu tapped a printed chromatogram pinned to her board. "The mass spectrometry readout is conclusive. I've run the sample 3 times against different controls. The margin of error is negligible. Here's the full report." She slid a folder across the counter. "I recommend we quantify the exact dosage potential. I'll need to test a replicated sample to determine the precise milligram range." Ethan nodded, pulling out his phone. "I'll arrange the replication. You have my authorization." He paused, taking a breath. "Dr. Liu, I need this to be airtight. My life, and Marcus's, recovery depends on it." She offered him a thin, professional smile. "I understand. I'll prioritize this. Meanwhile, keep this report secure. And Ethan, be cautious. Whoever orchestrated this is more dangerous than a mere social pariah. They're calculated, methodical." He swallowed hard, the enormity of her warning settling in. "Thank you." He turned to leave, then hesitated at the door. One more thing, did you notice anything else unusual? Any tampering in the lab data? Signs of sabotage? Dr. Liu's gaze darkened. A colleague mentioned a corrupted data file from yesterday's calibration run. It was overwritten deliberately. Someone knew exactly how to cover their tracks. Ethan exhaled slowly. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. The missing camera footage, the corrupted lab file, the calculated risk of a non-fatal dose. Until someone pushed for more. He realized he was up against someone who understood both cameras and chemistry, a predator who had mapped out every contingency. Back in his car, Ethan placed the report folder next to the evidence bag. The rising sun cast a pale glow across the dashboard as he shut the door. His phone buzzed with a message from Olivia. "Any luck?" he typed. "Confirmation. They tried to delete data in her lab, too. I'll need more help." He knew the path ahead would demand every ounce of his ingenuity, and perhaps an ally he had yet to contact. But at least now he had science on his side, a weapon tempered by precision and truth. Every evening after sunset, Ethan slipped out of his photography studio like a shadow, the click of the door behind him unheard. The narrow streets of downtown Portland glowed orange under antique street lamps, and the distant hum of traffic receded as he approached his loft. Inside, he drew the curtains tight against prying eyes, switched on only a single desk lamp, and booted up the custom encrypted laptop he'd built himself. The glow of the screen traced the sharp planes of his face as he logged into Oregon's prescription monitoring program, a government portal usually off-limits to private citizens. His fingers danced over the keys, each keystroke a heartbeat in the silent room. Ethan had spent his college years moonlighting as a cybersecurity consultant, deflecting corporate espionage attacks and probing network vulnerabilities. He never flaunted it. Photography was his passion, but now those same skills were a lifeline? He navigated the database's labyrinthine menus, patient names obscured by ID numbers, until he keyed in Claire Reynolds' unique identifier. A list of entries scrolled into view. 3 separate prescribers, each date and dosage more alarming than the last. October 12th, 38 mg. December 5th, 45 mg. January 20th, 60 mg. And worst of all, April 1st, just 2 weeks before the birthday dinner. An order for 120 MIM tablets. Ethan's stomach churned at the implication. Someone had systematically upped Claire's dosage on a crunchy schedule, perfectly timed to ensure her tremors and confusion in public. Compelled to corroborate, he switched windows to his social media dossier, a growing folder of screenshots from local community pages. One post, dated March 28th, read in jagged type. "Saw Claire Reynolds ranting about traitors in the wine cellar tonight. Terrifying." Another, from April 2nd, featured a shaky video of a woman stumbling near the golf green at dawn, her voice slurred as she muttered, "They'll all pay. They'll all pay." The clip's timestamp matched the prescription increment. Ethan cross-referenced the file's metadata and jotted it down with precision. 3:14 a.m., April 2, Country Club rear gate. By Thursday, he needed live confirmation. Under the guise of capturing reaction shots for the country club's upcoming gala flyer, he arrived unannounced just before dusk. The marble columns of the entrance loomed coldly as he flashed his business card. "Ethan Parker, Reynolds family photographer," he introduced himself with a practiced smile. Inside the quiet reception area, the clerk, an anxious young woman named Jenna, fumbled at her tablet. "Camera logs? I'm afraid we misplaced them," she stammered, avoiding his gaze. Ethan tapped his pen against his notepad. Strange. The log from the night of April 4th would be invaluable. "Could you check your archives?" Her eyes flickered. The system updated that morning. Some files didn't migrate properly." He gave a polite nod, but inside he seethed. "Understood. If you find anything, please email me immediately." When he left, the dusk had deepened into night. He pocketed her flimsy explanation alongside a mental note. Whoever erased the file had planned it well. Back in his loft, Ethan spread printed pages across the dining table, prescription charts, forum posts, timestamps, and Jenna's confirmation email. He placed a red pushpin next to each critical date on a corkboard map of timelines. Sticky notes fluttered with scrawled observations. The loft's exposed brick walls seemed to close in as he studied the pattern. Deliberate dose escalations, public outbursts, and missing footage, all converging on the Reynolds birthday dinner. With the evidence arrayed like puzzle pieces, Ethan felt both gravity and exhilaration. He poured himself a stiff black coffee and leaned back in his leather chair, mind already racing toward the next move. He would need hard copies for his attorney, a meeting with Dr. Liu to finalize dosage quantification, and a direct conversation with Mia's brother, Owen, whose consent might sway family opinion. Pulling an external drive from his desk, he encrypted the dossier and marked it, Seasonal Updates, Confidential. As midnight approached, Ethan stared at the wall of proof and whispered into the hush. They think they're untouchable. Let's see how they handle the truth. The rain began tapping against the windows, a steady drumbeat to his resolve. The hunt was no longer about suspicion. It was about delivering irrefutable facts and reclaiming his life from the jaws of betrayal. The grand ballroom of the Portland Country Club buzzed with muted conversation and the clink of crystal glasses. Chandeliers dripped light across white cloth tables, and a quartet in tuxedos coaxed a lilting waltz from their instruments. Ethan Parker adjusted the lens of his camera, stepping lightly between guests as he captured candid moments. A philanthropist pausing to admire a floral centerpiece. A local news anchor exchanging pleasantries with a gala organizer. The warm glow of goodwill that this annual charity event always seemed to emanate. At 8:15 p.m., the program moved to its highlight segment, Claire Reynolds' speech introducing the new Children's Literacy Initiative. She took the podium in a pale blue gown, her smile poised and practiced. Ethan lowered his camera, anticipating a poised address. The assembled benefactors leaned forward, ready to pledge their donations. But before Claire could begin, Ethan felt a surge of purpose. He stepped onto the stage, voice clear over the microphone's feedback. "Excuse me, everyone. May I have your attention for a moment?" Gasps fluttered through the crowd. The quartet halted mid-measure. Claire's smile faltered. Her eyes flicked to Marcus at the VIP table, then narrowed on Ethan. A murmur rippled. Is he interrupting? Ethan held up a sealed manila envelope stamped Confidential Toxicology Report. "Ms. Reynolds, I'm afraid there's urgent business we need to address before any more pledges are made." Claire's breath hitched. She glanced at the event coordinator, who swallowed hard but remained rooted to the spot. Ethan continued, speaking deliberately so every word echoed in the hushed room. "The evidence I've uncovered proves that you administered a potent barbiturate to my brother-in-law at your birthday dinner. I have Dr. Ava Liu's report confirming the substance, and the dose could have been lethal." A stunned silence followed. The quartet's bowstrings jutting into the quiet, the chandelier's crystals swaying imperceptibly. Claire's cheeks went pale, her perfect composure cracked. She opened her mouth, closed it, then let out a brittle laugh. "This is preposterous," she managed. "You have no right." Ethan raised a hand to still her. "I have every right. Every guest at that dinner is owed the truth," he said, voice unwavering. "Before we move forward with donations, we must ensure no one else is at risk. We cannot support an organization led by someone who nearly poisoned her own family." Whispers broke out. Some guests stared at Claire in horror. Others exchanged uneasy glances with their tables. A trustee clutching a paddle for bidding lowered it with hesitation. Marcus sat rigid, his hand trembling around his fork. Claire took a deep breath, shoulders trembling. I don't know what you think you saw," she stammered. "This is a gala, not a courtroom." But her voice quavered, echoing in the vaulted ceiling. With that, Ethan pivoted. He walked to the front row, placed the envelope on the event coordinator's table, and said, "You'll find everything you need to verify my claims inside. I'm sorry to disrupt the evening, but some truths require no ceremony." Turning on his heel, Ethan descended the stage. The murmurs crescendoed behind him as Claire's face drained of color. The charity gala, once a symbol of warmth and community, had transformed into the most public reckoning of Claire Reynolds' life. And at its center stood a photographer demanding justice. The rain had eased to a soft drizzle when Ethan's car rolled to a stop outside the Reynolds residence. The street lamps cast a golden haze on the glossy pavement as he climbed out, raincoat hood drawn tight. Inside, the echo of last night's gala disturbance still throbbed in his mind, a relentless pulse reminding him of the stakes. He paused at the front door, palm pressed to the cool wood, keenly aware that the next battle would be fought not with evidence, but with hearts and loyalties. He entered to find the dining room lighted in muted warmth, the long oak table set for a family dinner. Marcus sat at the head, stern and composed in a dark suit. Claire, perched to his right, eyes red-rimmed and darting anxiously. Mia, silent, stared down at her untouched plate. Ethan's heart clenched. He offered a tight nod to his wife's family and took the empty seat at the opposite end. Claire cleared her throat. "Ethan, thank you for joining us tonight," she said, voice brittle but courteous. "I hope you understand we all need time to recover from the incident." Her words hovered, heavy with implication. Ethan met her gaze steadily. "I understand, but sometimes recovery requires truth, not silence." He placed his napkin on his lap, folding his hands. The room fell into an uneasy quiet. A waiter appeared to pour water, but Marcus waved him away. "No need," he said, voice low. He turned to Mia. "Honey, could you pass the bread?" Mia's fingers trembled as she lifted the basket. She slid a roll toward Ethan, whom she scarcely looked at. He caught her eye, conveying solidarity without words. Claire leaned forward, voice softening into false concern. "Mia, darling, your husband is under a great deal of stress. It must be unsettling to see him so fixated on these allegations." She fixed Mia with an imploring gaze. "You know, Ethan, he has always cared for you both. Perhaps we should set aside the dark theories and focus on family harmony." Mia swallowed, her Adam's apple bobbing. Ethan sensed her internal conflict, the legacy of childhood loyalty wrestling with the disquiet in her heart. He fought not to reach across the table and take her hand. Marcus cleared his throat. "I've known Ethan for years," he said measuredly, "and while last night was unusual, I find it hard to believe he'd put our family at risk. But Mia, your mother's reputation, and ours, has been deeply shaken. I think what we need is professional help. Couples therapy might realign your perspectives." His tone was clinical kindness, a verdict disguised as care. Ethan felt the weight of Marcus's words like a verdict. Therapy. As if that would erase the barbiturate chart, the restored footage, the incriminating data. He inhaled slowly, mind racing through possibilities. Subpoenas, press leaks, the DA's office? But first, he had to reach Mia. Claire's lips quivered. "Ethan, perhaps you should reflect on your conduct. Ramming an envelope onto a gala stage was hardly considerate. You have alarmed many guests." He took a breath, then spoke with deliberate calm. "I did what I had to do to protect lives. If that made people uncomfortable, it is only because they finally see the truth." He paused, letting the words settle like stones in the silent room. "Mia, I know this is painful, but please remember who stood by you when the rest of the world turned against us." Mia's eyes glistened. She glanced from Claire's beseeching face to Ethan's resolute one. Finally, she lifted her napkin and met his gaze, a single nod conveying both apology and allegiance. Dining knives and forks lay forgotten as the tableau held its breath. Claire moistened her lips. "Mia," she began, but stopped, lips pressed together, as if realizing the snare she had set had instead ensnared herself. Marcus leaned back, lips pursed. The invitation to couples therapy hung unspoken between them like a challenge. No one moved to fill the silence until Olivia, seated beside Mia, cleared her throat. "I think it's time we let Mia make her own decisions," Olivia said softly. "She's a grown woman, married with her own life. We love you all, but this isn't about therapy. It's about trust." Her words were gentle but firm, shifting the balance. The moment broke. Marcus set down his glass. Claire's shoulders sagged. Mia exhaled, relief mingling with sorrow. Ethan felt a surge of gratitude for Olivia's intervention. He offered Mia a small, encouraging smile. Later, as Ethan stepped into the night's humid air, he realized the tide had shifted. The gaslighting attempt had faltered against family truth. The real work lay ahead, pressing forward with the evidence to secure justice. But for the first time in days, he believed. They might truly hear him. 2 nights after the tense family dinner, Ethan parked in the shadow of a maple tree outside Olivia's townhouse. Street lamps cast mottled patterns across the sidewalk, and a distant train whistle punctuated the quiet. He stepped onto the porch and rang the bell, heart thudding with anticipation. Moments later, Olivia, Mia's sister-in-law, opened the door, her expression grave but determined. "Come in," she whispered, pulling him inside. "I didn't want to use email. There's something you need to see in person." They climbed a narrow staircase to Olivia's home office, its walls lined with framed family photos and shelves of law books. A desktop computer glowed on the desk, its screen locked. Olivia took a deep breath and logged in, then retrieved a slim USB drive from her jacket pocket. "This," she said, handing it to him, "is the security footage from the birthday dinner. I downloaded it before Claire's people realized it was missing." Her voice trembled. "The club's system auto-erases clips after 24 hours, unless you archive them. I thought it was weird, so I grabbed a backup." Ethan's pulse quickened. He inserted the drive, and a folder of video files appeared. Several short segments, most time-stamped except one labeled Party Main Part 4. He double-clicked, and the video filled the screen. The camera's wide-angle lens captured the Reynolds dining room, guests seated at the long table, waitstaff circulating with trays. The clip flickered slightly, then steadied. Ethan advanced the timeline to 0:17 and 42 seconds. Claire, resplendent in her pale blue gown, stood near the sideboard holding 2 glasses of sangria. The camera angle was slightly obscured by a decorative pillar, but her movements were unmistakable. Claire glanced left and right as if scanning for witnesses. She uncapped a small vial of glint of metal under the chandelier's light and tilted it over one glass. A faint stream of clear liquid arced into the rouge-tinted sangria. She paused, mouth set in a hard line, then swiftly covered the mouth of the vial and tucked it inside her clutch. Turning, she set the 2 glasses on a tray and stepped away. Ethan's breath caught. He paused the video and rewound, watching frame by frame. Olivia leaned in, covering her mouth. "She knew exactly when the camera panned away," Ethan murmured, "and she thought no one was watching." He played on to see Claire carry the glasses toward the table, then the clip abruptly cut to static. "See?" Olivia said, pointing at the time code, 0:17 and 55 seconds. After that, it jumps to Marcus collapsing. Ethan nodded, eyes fixed on the frozen frame. "This is the proof I need. It shows intent, premeditation. She wasn't mistaken, Glass. She planned it." Olivia exhaled. "Mia still thinks you're unstable, but once she sees this, there's no turning back." Her voice quavered with fear. "Be careful. Claire's not above suing for defamation, or worse." Ethan removed the drive and slid it into his jacket pocket. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with gratitude. "This changes everything. I won't let her spin it." He stood, resolve hardening in his chest. Olivia reached out, touching his arm. "Promise me you'll keep evidence copies safe, and call me if you need anything." He nodded, stepping toward the door. "I promise." As he descended the stairs, he felt the weight of justice settling on his shoulders, tempered now by the certainty of what he had seen. Outside, the night air was cool and clear. He slipped into the shadows, USB drive in hand, ready to confront the truth with the most damning evidence he had ever held. Late one afternoon, Ethan arranged to meet Marcus Reynolds in the private lounge of the Portland Country Club, an oak-paneled room reserved for high-stakes discussions, its walls lined with portraits of past club presidents. The door clicked shut behind Ethan, and he found Marcus seated in a high-back leather chair, swirling a glass of bourbon. The late-day sunlight slanted through stained glass windows, painting amber streaks across the immaculate Persian rug. "Ethan," Marcus greeted him with a stiff nod, voice courteous but guarded. "Thanks for coming. I assume this is about last week's events." Ethan set his tablet down on the low walnut coffee table. "Yes, it is," he replied evenly. He tapped the screen, and the footage Olivia supplied flickered to life. Claire, draped in pale blue, slipping the vial's contents into Marcus's sangria. Marcus's grip tightened on his glass. "I don't know how that got there," Marcus stammered, eyes darting to the screen. "I never saw her do it. It must be a trick of the light." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You didn't see your wife unscrew a vial, pour a clear liquid into your drink, then slip it back into her purse? At 6:18 p.m., just before you collapsed?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Look, Claire, she's under a lot of stress. Maybe she thought it was harmless, like a prank." He paused, as if struggling for the right word. "She said it would teach me a lesson about trusting family, about not taking everything so seriously." Ethan's heart pounded. "A prank? You knew she planned to drug you?" Marcus flinched, gaze flickering away. "I thought she was joking. I didn't believe she'd go through with it. I was embarrassed in front of the guests, and I didn't stop her." His voice broke. Ethan leaned forward. "You told Claire exactly when the camera turned away, didn't you? You helped her time it." Marcus pressed his palms against his knees, gaze fixed on the rug. "She asked me for the schedule. I thought it was just about the catering. I never imagined she'd risk my life. Silence stretched. Ethan closed the laptop and met Marcus's eyes. Your negligence and your complicity nearly killed you, and it destroyed any trust your daughter has in you. Marcus's shoulders slumped. I know. I'm sorry. I wish I could take it back. Ethan exhaled slowly. This isn't about blame alone. It's about protecting Mia and anyone else who might be targeted next. He tapped the tablet. I have evidence of both of your roles. I'm taking this to the district attorney first thing tomorrow. Marcus nodded, tears glimmering. I understand. I'll cooperate with whatever you need. Ethan rose, pocketing the tablet. Thank you for your honesty. It's the first step toward making this right. As he walked to the door, Ethan realized that extracting a confession from Marcus, however reluctant, had shifted the balance irrevocably. The private room fell into stillness behind him, leaving only the echo of a shattered family facade and the knowledge that, at last, the full truth could no longer be hidden. 2 days after confronting Marcus, Ethan found himself standing outside a quiet cafe near Dr. Scott Taylor's research institute. Scott, Mia's ex-fiancé, now a renowned virologist, had been distant ever since their broken engagement, but Ethan hoped that the gravity of recent events would persuade him to cooperate. He pushed through the door to find Scott seated at a corner table, laptop open, baseball cap pulled low. Scott, Ethan began, sliding into the seat opposite. Thank you for meeting me. Scott looked up, eyes tired but curious. I read your email. You sound serious, Ethan. What did you find? Ethan placed a manila envelope on the table. Old emails between you and Mia, and some from her parents. They show a pattern of Claire and Marcus undermining your relationship from day one. He slid a USB drive across. I need your help to interpret them and verify their authenticity. Scott removed the drive with a frown. I never thought I'd see those again. He plugged it in and opened a folder labeled Mia_engagement_emails. The first message, dated 2 weeks before their wedding date, was from Claire. You're too focused on your career in Seattle. Mia deserves someone who puts family first. Think long and hard before proposing. Below it, an email thread between Claire and Marcus. Marcus, she's slipping away. We must remind her of our expectations. Claire, I'll plant doubts about Scott's loyalty. He travels too much. She'll believe anything. Ethan's pulse quickened. Scott scrolled further. Emails from local friends who had drifted away after Claire sowed rumors of infidelity. Invitations withdrawn, surprise emergencies, family dinners that interfered with wedding planning. Each message solidified the picture. Claire and Marcus had executed a calculated campaign to isolate Mia and sabotage her happiness. Scott exhaled slowly. I remember the calls from grieving friends saying they couldn't get hold of Mia. I assumed she was overwhelmed. Never imagined it was orchestrated. He looked up, remorse and resolve mingling in his eyes. These are damning. I'll certify the metadata, dates, headers, IP logs. They're real. Ethan nodded, relief washing over him. Thank you. With this, we can show that Mia's life has been manipulated for years, not just this poisoning. He reached across the table. You're doing the right thing. Scott hesitated, then squeezed Ethan's hand. For Mia, and for the truth. He copied the folder onto Ethan's encrypted drive and removed the USB. As they stood to leave, Ethan realized that each piece of digital evidence, photos, videos, lab reports, emails, formed a mosaic of deception that no spin doctor could erase. Tomorrow, he would compile the dossier for the district attorney and prepare Mia for what she needed to see. Tonight, however, he allowed himself a moment of quiet gratitude. He was no longer alone in this fight. Ethan's living room was transformed for the evening. Soft lamplight and flickering candles cast long shadows over the plush sectional sofa and the low wooden coffee table piled with takeout containers. He had prepared a simple chicken and vegetable stir-fry, comfort food to steady their nerves, and Mia, Olivia, and Scott sat crouched like students at the edge of their seats. The hum of the city outside felt miles away, replaced by the low drone of anxious breathing. Mia's eyes were rimmed with sleeplessness, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. Olivia offered her a reassuring smile while Scott adjusted the laptop's HDMI cable to the television. Ethan stood beside the screen, remote in hand, his heart pounding in his throat. This was the moment. The full mosaic of deceit laid bare. Thank you all for coming, Ethan began, voice calm but solemn. I promise you the whole story. Tonight you'll see everything Claire and Marcus tried to hide. He clicked the remote, and the TV flickered to life. First came the grainy clip of the birthday dinner. Claire's fluid movements as she slipped the clear liquid into Marcus's sangria, 10-man 0, 18 and 23 seconds, followed by the abrupt cut and Marcus's collapse. Mia gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Scott leaned forward, absorbing every frame with studious intensity. Ethan paused the footage, his finger hovering over the play button. Notice how she glances for witnesses, how she times the pour to the camera's blind spot. Premeditation, plain as day. He advanced to the country club interview, where Marcus's voice cracked as he admitted his role in the plan. I thought it was a prank. I didn't believe she'd go that far. Mia's expression crumpled. She gripped Olivia's hand. Next, he displayed Dr. Leo's toxicology report, the PDF scrolling to reveal the chemical analysis. Enough barbiturate to render an adult unconscious, nearly fatal at higher doses. Scott nodded, murmuring, "This proves intent." Then came the spreadsheet of prescription escalations. 30 mg, 45 mg, 60 mg, 120 mg, with dates neatly lined up against local rumor posts. A wine cellar rant on March 28th, a faltering morning stumble on April 2nd. Mia's breathing hitched as she read each entry, the realization settling like ice in her chest. Finally, the engagement email chain. Claire, warning Scott Mia deserves someone who puts family first, followed by messages coordinating bash the fiancé rumors and surprise family interventions. Mia's tears fell freely now, sorrow and betrayal warring on her face. The room was silent. Ethan switched off the TV and sat beside Mia, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry you had to see this," he said quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you, but you deserve the truth." Mia turned to him, voice trembling. I just don't know what to say," she swallowed. "Thank you for showing me. I can't believe they did all this." Olivia hugged her. Scott reached out, squeezing her other hand. In that fragile moment, the three of them formed a united front. Mia, no longer alone, bolstered by evidence and love. Ethan exhaled, relief and sadness mingling. The truth had broken them open, but it had also forged a path toward healing. As the first real crack in the Reynolds facade splintered away, he knew the fight was far from over. But for Mia, this was the transformative bedrock upon which she would rebuild her life. The evening air was dense with tension as Ethan, Mia, Olivia, Scott, Owen, and Vanessa stepped across the threshold of Claire and Marcus Reynolds' grand living room. The high ceiling and tall windows, once symbols of family opulence, felt cavernous and cold. Ethan carried his camera bag and set up a tripod in the corner, its lens trained on the study area, where Claire and Marcus sat stiffly on their velvet settee. "I appreciate you agreeing to meet under these circumstances," Ethan began, voice even but firm. He clicked on a portable recorder placed on the coffee table. "This session is being recorded for accuracy." Marcus's jaw twitched. Claire's fingers tightened on the armrest. Owen cleared his throat. "We're here because the truth matters, Dad, Mom." His voice wavered with suppressed emotion. "Mia, Vanessa, and I deserve to know what happened." Ethan tapped the recorder. "Let me recap. First, the security footage." He connected his laptop to the TV, and the opening shot of Claire slipping the vial into Marcus's sangria filled the screen. Claire's eyes flickered with recognition, her composure fraying. "No, this is doctored," she blurted, voice cracking. "I never did that." Ethan's tone remained calm. The raw footage came directly from the club's server, courtesy of Olivia. No edits, no filters. He advanced to the clip of Marcus confessing his role. And here's Dad admitting he helped plan it. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, and swallowed. I was ashamed. I thought she was only trying to teach me a lesson." His voice faded. "Teaching you a lesson?" Scott interjected, rising. "You nearly killed him, and you tried to erase the evidence." He held up Dr. Liu's toxicology report. "This isn't a misunderstanding. It's poison." Claire's face went ashen. She glanced at Marcus for support, but he looked away. Mia stood and approached the settee. "I grew up trusting you both," she said softly, "but you treated me like a pawn." Tears glistened in her eyes. "You manipulated my relationships, you drugged my husband, and you lied to me." Vanessa stepped forward, her voice steady. "You orchestrated it all. I've lost friends because of your rumors. Owen nearly divorced his girlfriend. I've watched your campaign ruin lives. The room fell silent. Claire sank into the cushions, burying her face in her hands. Marcus bowed his head. Ethan switched off the TV and moved to stand beside Mia. "This ends tonight," he said. "You will start treating us with respect, or we'll release every file, every email, every clip to the public." A long moment passed before Claire spoke, voice muffled. I'm sorry." She lifted her tear-streaked face. "I thought I was protecting you, Marcus. I never meant to lose control." "You did," Owen replied, "and you lost our trust." Marcus looked at his children, remorse in his eyes. "I'm sorry too. I gave in to her plan." His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Mia." Mia turned away, tears streaming. "I need space," she whispered. She took Ethan's hand, and together they walked toward the door, Owen and Vanessa flanking them. As the front door closed behind them, the record button on the tripod clicked off. The Reynolds living room sat empty, the veneer of perfection shattered, and in its quiet aftermath lay the promise of consequences finally met. A week after the family confrontation, Ethan and Mia agreed to join Claire and Marcus for a peace dinner in the Reynolds' sunroom, a glass-walled alcove overlooking the rose garden at twilight. Lanterns hung from the ceiling, their soft glow pooling on the pale stone floor. A low table was set with linen napkins, crystal water glasses, and a simple menu of grilled salmon, herbed couscous, and roasted asparagus. Claire's supposed gesture of reconciliation. Mia lifted the first glass of sparkling water, the ice tangling her fingers. Olivia and Scott stood quietly in the background, offering support. Marcus cleared his throat as Ethan placed the final dish on the table. "We appreciate the invitation," Ethan said, voice measured. Claire gave a small, tight smile. "We want to move forward as a family," she replied. As they passed plates and exchanged polite conversation, weather, Mia's photography projects, Owen's law school exams, a hush fell over the group. Ethan reached across, took Mia's hand, and Mia set down her fork. She inhaled, her eyes shining with a secret joy. "There's something else we'd like to share," she began, voice soft but unwavering. Claire's brow arched. Marcus's grip on his napkin tightened. "I'm pregnant," Mia announced, placing a gentle hand on her belly. "I'm 3 months along." The words lingered in the warm evening air. Olivia exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Scott's shoulders sagged in relief. Claire's lips parted in astonishment, then quivered. Marcus stared, as though seeing his daughter in a new light. Mia's eyes met Claire's. "We know this baby will bring us joy," she said, "but we also know how much you value family and how easily trust can be broken." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. "So let me be clear. If either of you ever tries to manipulate our lives again, if you break our boundaries or interfere with our growing family, Ethan and I will make every piece of evidence public." Her tone was calm, resolute. Claire's face paled. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. The soft clink of silverware on porcelain felt distant. "We understand," Claire whispered. Marcus nodded once, stiffly. Mia squeezed Ethan's hand, and he offered Claire and Marcus a steady look. The chance to respect their child's future, and the warning that any betrayal would have irrevocable consequences. Outside, lantern light flickered on the roses as the promise of new life cast its fragile hope across the garden. In the weeks that followed, the Reynolds facade finally crumbled. The district attorney reviewed Ethan's dossier and declined to file charges against him, instead opening an inquiry into Claire and Marcus's actions. Public scrutiny forced them into a reluctant apology tour, with none of the old defenses intact. Mia, free from the shadows of manipulation, built a life centered on honesty and love. She and Ethan welcomed their daughter into a home defined by trust, not control. Olivia and Owen repaired their relationships, forging new bonds grounded in mutual respect. And Ethan's photography gallery, once a passion project, became a symbol of truth illuminated, each image a testament to resilience and integrity. True justice was not revenge in bitter words or ruined reputations, but the quiet restoration of what was stolen: peace of mind, family unity, and self-respect. In the end, the most powerful declaration wasn't made in courtrooms or scandals, but in living well on one's own terms.